I'm Ronnie from Ronnie's Garage in Southern California. Welcome to our first hands-on, without touching Zoom technical meet. And what we're going to do today, instead of being super vehicle specific, we're going to be talking about basic electrical concepts and testing. Any other questions? So the question is how do you connect these wires and the meter? And let's say his problem is on a silver cloud and it's a flasher problem and or switch and or bulb and or wiring circuit. How do you put this to where you can see it? You have to think about it. There's no magic bullet. I wish there was like one of those little things, the screen that you could do, but then you wouldn't be able to get under the dash because you'd have this thing on your head. Yeah, that's the challenge. And what you can do is you can get test leads, and you can just make long test leads to your meter and do it that way. If you have to go end to end on a car, that's how you do it. I don't know if that's going to help much, but okay. So we'll go on to the next step here. We'll talk about fuses. Now, Rolls-Royce and their infinite wisdom, absolutely. Where did my little fuse go? They are not consistent. There we go. So in early post-wars, even the pre-war ones, they used a lot of these for fuses. That is a wrappable fuse, and we'll get into that in a moment. When they went to the silver cloud, they went with that fuse. Okay, when they went to the silver shadow, they went to that fuse, plus that fuse, plus that fuse. And then later on, they carried these fuses on. I guess there was a reason. Rather than go down to the the auto parts store and pay $2 for a little glass fuse and put it in and have it pop right away because there's a short circuit, these are rewrappable. And I'll start, they all rewrap the same way essentially. You've got a piece of fuse wire, a couple copper tangs. This is fuse wire, okay. Here's a giant spool of it. If anybody, please send me an email with your address and I will send you some in an envelope. This, I think it's 10 to 15 amp rated. I'm pretty sure it's 15 amp rated. This is a special tinned wire, and it's meant to, when it gets too much current going through it, that it breaks. And you can see that this one has broke. You see that? You see the end's gone. And I have seen a lot of creative stuff. I've seen them wrap it with copper wire, which is guaranteed to melt your wires if you have a really deep short. And exciting than to have a wire in a harness inside a dash melt. It creates an incredible amount of smoke, and some of them even flame up. And it's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling. And in the automotive world, especially the British car mechanic world, that's called letting the smoke out. The object is to fix your problem without letting the smoke out. Because when the smoke comes out, you got a much, much bigger problem, okay? So, that being said, this is a silver cloud fuse. We're going to section of this fuse wire. And there are, if you look at this fuse, I don't know if you can see it, but this has kind of got a lot of slope to it. And then this has a shoulder. So the fuse has to go to the shoulder side. And the way I do them, and first of all, you want to clean this up. I'm not going to get into that. See that corrosion on there? Any bit of resistance, dirt, charring, grease, will lower the current capacity of your circuit. So take the first fold down and put it on the top. Then I take my fuse wire and I start it. And what I do is I go over the top of this little winding nub, and then I come back under. Then this sandwiching that wire. And we'll do it over the other side. Back up. Make sure it's good and sandwiched and it stays in place as I take a pair of small pliers, needle nose, and do that. So I'm squeezing the ends so it gets up and flat. Just cut a new rebuilt fuse. And then this one works the same way. This one, let me say this is pre-war. This is early post-war, and then they went back and they were very similar to this. And the idea is to get I like to get a double pieces underneath the sandwich to make sure we have it. You want to make sure you don't double this up. So I got a little, because then it'll carry extra current. You will not need that. So there's that. And these just get pushed in. Glass fuses, when they pop, they pop. Usually you can see the wires broken. Sometimes these old Lucas, Prince of Darkness fuses, they have little wires. Usually the fuse wire inside is soldered on the ends. And it may look good here, but it's not making contact inside. This is a blade fuse. The long glass fuses, all the fuses come in different amperages except for this. Okay, the different amperages are designed to prevent the smoke from coming out of your circuitry, and the fuse is supposed to. So typically these long fuses on the Rolls, due to the age of the cars and the amount of resistance in the system, I typically put a little heavier fuse in. Typically these are 30s, and even though the circuit diagram on these short ones calls for a 10 or a 15, I always put a 20 in. I've yet to let the smoke out on any cars from that. These fuses come anywhere from 2.5 amps up to 40 amps, these little fuses. So you have to make sure that you try to stick with the issue on that. I recently had an Arnage in that had one of these fuses that kept blowing and in the circuit. So we put a little bit bigger fuse and it blew, and a little bit bigger fuse and it blew, and then a little bit bigger fuse and it quit blowing. But the car had a lot of funky little gremlins. So we got the car back, and I was finally able to find the short circuit that was causing this fuse to blow. And it was in a multiple circuit, but it was in the instrument supply circuit. So all the gauges were fed off of it. And after a lot of time and looking at multiple types of wiring diagram, I found out that the oil pressure switch, the item on the engine, out in the engine compartment that told the oil pressure gauge where to read, had a voltage feed to it. I've never seen one of those. That was shorted, the switch. So once I fixed that, which took a lot of time to find that, then we were able to put the 5 amp fuse back in, and it didn't have any problem. All those gremlins went away. So that's one of the dangers of increasing your fuse rating. Fortunately, it didn't turn out bad for us, but we were able to finally figure that problem out.